When the door unlocked itself, I thought my husband had finally come home. But it wasn't him. At least, not the man I thought I married. That sound, the soft click of the lock turning from the outside, used to comfort me. It meant Daniel was home safe. It meant the day was over, dinner could be served, and the rhythm of our life could return to its quiet hum. But that night, it didn't sound right. Something in the way the handle turned slow, deliberate, made my chest tighten. The light in the hallway stretched across the living room, and for a moment, I saw his silhouette, tall, broad shoulders, that same familiar build. Then he stepped inside. "Hey," I whispered from the couch, my voice trembling. "You scared me." I didn't even hear the car. He froze, just for a second, and then smiled. A strange, uneven smile. "Sorry," he said, voice low, almost too calm. "Forgot my keys." That didn't make sense. Daniel never forgot his keys. Still, I got up and walked toward him, the soft carpet muffling my steps. "I thought you had them. You left them on the hook this morning." He looked at me, really looked, like he was studying me for the first time. His eyes darted around the room, landing briefly on the framed photo of our wedding on the wall. Then he smiled again, more convincingly this time. "Long day," he said simply. I nodded, though something deep inside whispered no, it's not that simple. He smelled different. Not like his usual cologne, the one I bought him every Christmas, but sharper, colder, with a hint of something metallic. And his voice, it was the same tone, the same rhythm. But his laugh, when I said something about dinner waiting, it wasn't Daniel's laugh. It was close. Too close. Earlier that day, life had been painfully ordinary. I worked from home, answered emails, folded laundry that had sat in the basket for 3 days. I'd been married to Daniel for 11 years, long enough to know that ordinary was a blessing. We lived in a quiet suburb, the kind where neighbors waved but didn't pry. Our house, a simple brick 2-story with a maple tree out front, held more memories than I cared to count. The good ones, painting the nursery when we thought we'd start a family. The bad ones, repainting it years later when the doctor said we wouldn't. Still, we were okay. Or at least I thought we were. Daniel worked in construction management, a steady job, long hours, but honest work. He was calm, even-tempered, the kind of man people trusted instantly. Everyone loved him, my friends, my family, the neighbors. And then there was his twin, David. The opposite in every way. Charming, reckless, unpredictable. They shared a face, but not a life. David had disappeared 8 years ago after a fight, a brutal one, that none of us ever really talked about again. Daniel said his brother went off the grid, chasing some business venture that went wrong. No one saw him again. Not even a trace. After 2 years, everyone assumed he was gone for good. But that night, when the lock turned on its own, and the man standing before me looked like Daniel, yet somehow not, I couldn't help but feel the ghost of his brother in the room. He sat down at the dinner table while I reheated the food. I watched him from the kitchen, the way he moved, how he rolled up his sleeves before eating. Daniel always unbuttoned them halfway, not rolled. Small things. But when you've lived with someone for over a decade, small things become the truth. He ate quietly, like he hadn't had a proper meal in days. "Good?" I asked, my voice thinner than usual. He nodded, mouth full. "Really good. You always made the best roast chicken." I frowned. "Made. Past tense." "You mean make," I corrected gently. "I still do." He looked up then, eyes flicking to mine, holding them for a second too long. "Right," he said, forcing a smile. "Of course." Something inside me shifted. Later, as we got ready for bed, I watched him brush his teeth. It should have been the most normal moment in the world. But he brushed with his left hand. Daniel was right-handed. I said nothing. I just watched. Every movement, every hesitation. He turned off the bathroom light before walking out, another thing Daniel never did. When he finally crawled into bed beside me, he reached out and touched my hair. "You changed it," he murmured. I froze. "What?" He smiled faintly. "Your hair. You used to wear it shorter." I stared at him. "That was years ago." "I know," he said. "I just liked it that way." For the first time in our marriage, I didn't sleep beside my husband. I slept beside someone who wore his face. The next morning, I woke to the sound of running water. He was already in the shower. Normally, Daniel played music on his phone, singing quietly under the steam. But this time silence. When he came out, he wrapped a towel around his waist and smiled. "Coffee?" he asked. It was such a simple word. But the way he said it, the tone, the rhythm, made my stomach twist again. "Sure," I said, my voice even. He kissed me lightly on the forehead before walking downstairs. And in that kiss, soft, cautious, unfamiliar, I knew something was terribly wrong. That afternoon, I found the first proof. Daniel had a fingerprint-locked drawer in his office, one I'd never needed to open before. I had no reason to, but curiosity burned hotter than fear that day. When he left for work, I pressed my finger to the scanner. It blinked red. Access denied. I tried again. Red. Then, out of instinct, I used my left thumb instead of my right. Green. Unlocked. Inside were 2 passports, both with the same photo. One for Daniel Ross, one for David Ross. And both had fingerprints registered to open the same drawer. I remember standing there, staring at the documents, my pulse hammering in my throat. I whispered out loud to no one, "Who are you?" And in that quiet house, I realized the truth I'd been avoiding. The man sleeping in my bed might not be my husband at all. I didn't sleep that night. Not really. I just lay there, pretending to breathe evenly, pretending to be calm while my mind raced through 1,000 impossible explanations. Maybe there was a mix-up. Maybe Daniel had lost his ID and needed a new one. Maybe there was some security reason for registering both fingerprints. Maybe. But my gut whispered something colder. He's not Daniel. When the man beside me turned in his sleep, I flinched. The sound of his breathing was wrong. Even the way he said my name, he called me Anna, like he was tasting it, like the word was new in his mouth. It was 3:17 a.m. when I slipped out of bed, walked downstairs, and opened my laptop. I searched every combination of words I could think of: identical twin identity theft, missing brother returns, how to tell twins apart. The search results were absurd. True crime articles, Reddit threads, a list of cases where one twin took the other's place. I read until the words started blurring. One detail kept coming up: fingerprints. Twins don't share them. That should have been comforting, because I had just used the scanner. But it wasn't. Because that meant Daniel had added his brother's prints to the system. Or worse, it wasn't Daniel's system anymore. By sunrise, I made coffee for both of us, pretending everything was fine. He smiled like nothing had changed. He wore my husband's watch, my husband's wedding ring, my husband's skin. When he left for work, I followed him. He didn't take Daniel's usual route. Instead of heading toward the construction office downtown, he turned onto the coastal highway, the one that led nowhere near his job site. I followed from a few cars back, my palms slick on the steering wheel. Every few miles, he'd glance at his side mirror. Once, our eyes almost met. He stopped at a small diner on the edge of town, a place I'd never seen him visit before. I parked across the street and waited. 10 minutes later, a woman arrived, a stranger with auburn hair and a beige coat. She sat across from him in a booth, close enough that their shoulders almost touched. He leaned forward, speaking quietly, his hand resting on the table. The woman nodded, sliding something toward him, an envelope. I could see the edge of cash peeking out. My breath hitched. When he stood to leave, I ducked low in the car seat. He didn't see me, but the woman did. For a fraction of a second, our eyes met through the glass. Hers widened recognition, shock, fear. Then she looked away. That evening, I was sitting at the kitchen counter when he came home. He smiled like always, loosened his tie, and kissed the top of my head. "How was your day?" he asked. I stared at him. "Long. Yours?" "Same old," he said. "Meetings, deadlines, chaos. A practiced lie. Smooth, steady. The kind of lie that fits too easily in a mouth that's done it before." I looked down at his hands as he poured himself a drink. There was a small cut on his knuckle, fresh, shallow, still red. "Rough day at the office?" I asked lightly. He glanced down. "Oh yeah. Caught it on some rebar." But Daniel never touched rebar. He managed projects from his laptop. I smiled faintly, hiding the tremor in my jaw. You should disinfect it. He grinned. Yes, ma'am. For the first time in our marriage, I felt like I was talking to a stranger in my kitchen. That night, I went back to the office drawer. I took photos of both passports. Then I called the police quietly from the downstairs guest bathroom, door locked. The woman on the other end spoke softly. Ma'am, do you believe someone's impersonating your husband? I don't know, I whispered. But something's wrong. I found 2 passports, both with the same face. And my husband's twin. He's been missing for years. She asked me for details, background, verification. She promised to flag the case. But her tone changed when I mentioned identical twins. Ma'am, it's not illegal to have 2 IDs for verification if they're legitimate. Could be a clerical error. A clerical error. That's what everyone always says before the truth explodes. 2 days later, the call came. Unknown number. Male voice. Calm. Mrs. Ross. Yes. This is Detective Mallory, County Police. We got your report. I've got a few questions, starting with the fact that your husband's twin, David Ross, was declared legally dead 5 years ago. I froze. Declared dead? Yes, ma'am. Officially. After no contact and presumed drowning. Your husband signed the affidavit himself. My pulse thudded in my ears. So, if David's dead, who's in my house right now? The line went quiet. Then the detective said, we're going to need you to stay calm. Can you confirm your husband's whereabouts right now? I whispered, he's upstairs. Asleep. Don't alert him. I'll send an officer in the morning for verification. Can you stay somewhere else tonight? I hesitated. No. If I leave, he'll know. Then act normal, he said. And make sure the doors are locked from your side. When the call ended, I sat on the bathroom floor, shaking. That's when I heard it, footsteps in the hallway. Slow. Heavy. Then his voice. Anna? You okay in there? My throat went dry. Yeah, just brushing my teeth. A pause. Then, you've been in there a while. He tried the handle. It rattled. I clutched my phone, whispering silently to the locked door. Please don't open. After a few seconds, the handle stilled. His voice softened. Come to bed soon, okay? When I finally exhaled, the mirror fogged from my breath. I stared at my reflection, pale, trembling, and whispered the words that had been circling my mind since the moment the lock turned on its own that night. I don't think you're my husband. The next morning, I woke to the smell of coffee. He was downstairs humming a tune low, slow, almost tender. The same tune Daniel used to hum when we first dated. I walked down the stairs, heart pounding, every sense alert. He smiled at me over the coffee mug. You looked tired, Anna. Bad dreams. I forced a smile. Something like that. He gestured toward the table. Sit. Eat. On the counter sat 2 plates, pancakes shaped into uneven hearts. He laughed when he saw my expression. I used to make these for you when we were broke. Remember? I froze. Because that was wrong too. The smell of the pancakes turned my stomach. He'd stacked them high, just like the ones from that old diner Daniel used to take me to on Sundays. The syrup glistened, golden and thick, pooling at the edges of the plate. It should have been comforting. Instead, it felt staged, a copy of something real. I sat down slowly, pretending to eat. He watched me carefully, as if memorizing my reactions. So, he said between bites, you've been quiet lately. Everything okay? Just tired, I murmured. He nodded. You've always carried too much on your shoulders. My fork paused midair. You've always. The words came out so naturally, but how could he know that? How could someone who had been gone for years know my small habits, my moods, my unspoken thoughts? Unless he'd been watching. After breakfast, he said he had errands to run. I waited until the sound of the car faded down the street before locking every door and window. Then I went to the basement. Daniel kept old project boxes there. Blueprints, receipts, tax forms, a life organized by year. I wanted something solid, something that proved my husband hadn't been replaced. Hours passed as I sifted through papers yellowed at the edges. Then I found it. A small metal tin, tucked behind an old toolbox. Inside were family photos, childhood shots of the twins. Two identical boys with matching smiles, arms slung over each other's shoulders. On the back of one photo, written in faded ink, were 5 words: "If I disappear, check him." My breath caught. The handwriting, Daniel's. I stared at the message until it blurred. My hands trembled so badly the photo almost slipped. That afternoon, I took the picture to my neighbor, Mrs. Keene. She'd lived next door for 20 years, sharp as a tack even in her late 70s. When she opened the door, her eyes widened. "Anna, honey, are you all right? You look pale." I forced a smile. "I'm fine. I just needed your memory." She invited me in. The smell of lavender and old books filled her living room. I handed her the photograph. "Do you remember which one of these boys is Daniel?" I asked. She squinted, holding the photo close. "Oh, sure. That's Daniel on the left. He had that little mole on his jaw. David didn't." A cold wave rolled through me. Because the man in my house, the man sleeping beside me, didn't have that mole. When I got home, he was already back. Standing in the kitchen, sleeves rolled up, chopping vegetables like he belonged there. "Hey," he said, glancing over his shoulder. "I was thinking we could have friends over soon. It's been too quiet in this house." My heart pounded. "You hate dinner parties." He laughed. "Maybe I've changed." I studied his face, every detail. No mole. The scar above his eyebrow was slightly longer than Daniel's, the shape of his jaw just a fraction sharper. How had I missed it before? "You're staring," he said softly, smiling. "Everything okay?" I forced a breath. "Yeah, just thinking how different you seem lately." He wiped his hands on a towel, stepped closer. "Different how?" "Just happier," I lied. He grinned. "Good. I've got a lot to be happy about." Then he leaned in and kissed me. I didn't kiss back, because as his hand touched my neck, I caught the faintest scent beneath his cologne, salt water and oil. The smell of the sea. David had drowned. At least, that's what we were told. That night, I didn't sleep. Again. The image of that photo burned behind my eyes. "If I disappear, check him." Was Daniel warning me from years ago? Had he known this would happen? By dawn, I had a plan. When he left for work, I drove to the police station. Detective Mallory met me in a small interview room, beige walls, coffee stains, the hum of a flickering light above us. I laid the photograph on the table. "That's Daniel's handwriting," I said. "He wrote that years before his brother disappeared." Mallory leaned forward. "You're sure?" "Yes. He studied it for a long time. We pulled Daniel Ross's file. Fingerprints, dental records, everything. But there's a problem." "What kind of problem?" He hesitated. "The body we found 5 years ago, the one we identified as David, was too decomposed for prints. The identification came from dental charts. But the records we received were copied." "Copied from where?" "Daniel's employer. He provided them after the accident." My heart stopped. "Are you saying it might have been Daniel in that body?" He nodded slowly. "We can't confirm anything yet. But if the man living in your house is his brother, we need proof." I swallowed hard. "How do I get it?" "Anything personal," Mallory said. "Something only Daniel would have, a DNA sample, a unique scar, anything. Just be careful. Don't confront him until we know for sure." I nodded, gripping the edge of the table to stop my hands from shaking. When I got home, he was sitting in the living room, flipping through an old photo album. He looked up and smiled. "Hey, where'd you run off to?" "Grocery store," I lied. He patted the seat beside him. "Come look at these. I found our old trip photos. Remember the cabin by the lake?" I hesitated, then sat down. On the open page was a photo of Daniel and me at the lake, the year before David vanished. Daniel had a small scar on his left shoulder from a work injury. The man beside me now wore a short-sleeved shirt. No scar. "Do you miss him?" he asked suddenly. I blinked. "Who?" "David," he said quietly, watching me closely. "Your brother-in-law." I swallowed. "Of course I do. He was family." He nodded slowly, lips curling into a faint, knowing smile. "Good," he said. "Because sometimes I miss him too." That night, I couldn't keep up the act any longer. I texted Detective Mallory one line. "I think I can get his DNA." Then I crept into the bathroom and pulled his toothbrush from the cup. I placed it inside a sealed plastic bag, heart pounding so hard I could barely breathe. When I stepped out, he was standing in the doorway. "You okay?" he asked. My fingers clenched around the bag hidden behind my back. "Yeah," I said, forcing a smile. "Just couldn't sleep." He tilted his head slightly, eyes narrowing. "You've been jumpy lately." I laughed nervously. "Too much caffeine." He stepped closer. For a heartbeat, I thought he could hear how fast my heart was racing. Then he smiled again, that wrong, unfamiliar smile, and said, "Maybe I'll make us tea instead." I watched him walk away, and in that moment, I realized I was living with a man who looked like my husband, spoke like my husband, but wasn't him. And the longer he stayed, the more I feared he was never going to leave. The next morning, I drove straight to the police station, the toothbrush sealed tight in a sandwich bag on the passenger seat. Every red light felt like a trap, every passing car like a pair of eyes following me. I gripped the steering wheel so hard my knuckles turned white. Detective Mallory met me in the parking lot, plain clothes, sunglasses, coffee in hand. "You got it?" he asked quietly. I nodded, handing over the bag. He examined it for a second, then slipped it inside his coat pocket. "We'll run it against your husband's medical records. Might take a day or two." "2 days," I whispered. "He's sleeping next to me tonight." Mallory gave me a sympathetic look. "I'll try to expedite it. Just don't do anything rash." I wanted to tell him that just staying alive around that man felt rash enough. That night, the stranger cooked dinner again. Spaghetti, Daniel's favorite. Except Daniel never added onions. This version did. He poured me a glass of wine, his voice soft, gentle. "You seem tense. Did something happen today?" My throat tightened. "No, just work." He smiled faintly. "You quit that job 6 months ago." The fork slipped from my fingers, clattering against the plate. I forced a laugh. "Right. I meant, house stuff." He studied me for a long moment, his eyes searching mine, his lips barely curved. "House stuff," he repeated slowly. "You've always been bad at lying, Anna." The room went cold. He leaned back, sipping his wine. "If something's bothering you, you can tell me." I said I'm fine, I snapped. The sharpness in my voice surprised even me. But his reaction was worse. He didn't get angry. He just smiled, that slow, unnerving smile, the kind that says I'm 10 steps ahead of you. "Okay," he said softly. "If you say so." He reached across the table and brushed his thumb against my wrist, the gesture so intimate it made my skin crawl. Then he whispered, "You really don't remember, do you?" I froze. "Remember what?" He smiled wider. "Nothing. Never mind." That night, I locked myself in the bathroom again. My hands shook as I scrolled through my messages, no reply from Mallory yet. I stared at the reflection in the mirror. My face looked older, thinner, haunted. And behind the fear was something else, anger. If this man wasn't Daniel, then where was my husband? And what had he done to him? I needed proof. Not just for the police, for myself. The next day, while he was in the shower, I went through his wallet. Inside were the usual things: credit cards, driver's license, a few crumpled receipts. But tucked in the back pocket was something I hadn't seen before, an old photograph. 2 boys again. The twins. But this time, one of them had his arm in a cast. Scrawled on the back, "You owe me a life." I dropped the photo like it burned. He came out of the shower moments later, towel slung low on his hips. "Looking for something?" he asked. My heart nearly stopped. "No. I just thought I heard my phone ring." He stepped closer, close enough for me to smell that same metallic scent of salt water and soap. "Funny," he said, his eyes flicking to the nightstand where the wallet lay half open. "Because I heard you." I laughed too quickly. "You're paranoid." He tilted his head. "Maybe. Or maybe I've just learned not to trust people who pretend to love me." The words were sharp, too sharp. "Who are you talking about?" I asked carefully. He stared at me for a long time. Then, without answering, he turned and walked out of the room. That afternoon, I couldn't sit still. I cleaned, folded, paced. Every sound from upstairs made me jump. When my phone buzzed, I nearly dropped it. It was Detective Mallory. DNA results confirm match to David Ross, not Daniel Ross. Call me when safe. I read it 3 times, my heartbeat drowning out everything else. David, not Daniel. The man in my home was the dead twin. And he knew I was starting to see it. I didn't think. I just moved. I grabbed my purse, car keys, and phone. Quiet steps, one at a time, toward the front door. But as I reached for the handle, his voice came from behind me. Going somewhere? I froze. He was standing at the top of the stairs, hair damp, no smile this time. Just needed some air, I said softly. He nodded slowly, descending 1 step at a time. You've been avoiding me. And now, sneaking off in the middle of the day, my fingers trembled on the door handle. I said I need air. He stopped halfway down. Anna, he said, his voice low, dangerous. You know, don't you? My stomach dropped. Know what? I whispered. He smiled again, small, tired, bitter. You always could tell us apart. You just didn't want to. I bolted. I yanked the door open and ran barefoot down the driveway, my keys clattering to the ground. I didn't look back, didn't stop until I reached the neighbor's porch. Mrs. Keene opened the door just as I collapsed onto the steps. Anna? What happened? Call the police, I gasped. He's not Daniel. He's David. Her eyes went wide. Oh my lord, but before she could finish, the screech of tires cut her off. His car. He was leaving. The police arrived within minutes, flashing lights, questions, radios crackling. I gave them the DNA message, the photo, everything. Detective Mallory showed up soon after, his face grave. He's gone, he said. We checked his car registration. It's under a fake name. We'll put out a warrant. But Anna, I looked up at him. What? He hesitated. We found something else in the system. The fingerprints that opened your door that night, they belonged to both brothers. I blinked. What does that mean? It means Daniel added his brother's prints before he disappeared. My throat went dry. Why would he do that? Mallory sighed. That's what we're trying to figure out. That night, I sat in my quiet house surrounded by silence and flashing memories. The laughter, the little changes, the fear. I looked again at Daniel's message on the photo. If I disappear, check him. Now I understood. It wasn't just a warning. It was a confession. Something had happened between them years ago, and somehow it had found its way back to my doorstep. When the clock struck midnight, I stood by the front door staring at the lock that had started it all, the one that opened by itself that night. I whispered to the empty room, "You owe me a life." And for the first time, I didn't know which brother I was saying it to. The news spread faster than I could contain it. By morning, the story was everywhere. Man returns from the dead, twin missing, suburban wife discovers identity switch, all splashed across local headlines. Reporters camped outside my gate. Neighbors whispered behind drawn curtains. The same people who used to smile and wave when Daniel mowed the lawn now looked at me like I was a headline come to life. Detective Mallory called it a developing case. To me, it was a nightmare that refused to wake up. They searched the nearby woods, the lake, the coastal road. They found tire tracks, a burned cell phone, and a fragment of fabric, the same blue plaid Daniel always wore when he worked in the yard. But no body. No Daniel. The police confirmed that David had been using Daniel's credit cards and social security number for months. Mallory showed me the files himself. He rebuilt your husband's life piece by piece, bought time, property, everything in Daniel's name. But why? I asked quietly. Mallory sighed. That's the question. Then he hesitated, lowering his voice. We pulled David's old records. Turns out, he'd been in trouble years ago, embezzlement, fraud, one pending assault case that disappeared when he went missing. I stared at him. Daniel never told me that. He gave me a small, sympathetic look. Maybe he thought it was over. A week passed with no word. Every night, I jumped at shadows, afraid the wrong man might come back. The media attention died down, but the silence in my house didn't. It lingered, heavy and watching, like something had been left unfinished. I avoided the bedroom. The scent of his cologne still clung to the sheets. Sometimes, when the wind rattled the windows, I imagined I could hear two voices overlapping, one calm and familiar, the other smooth, deceptive. It was the same face, the same blood. How could love and danger look so much alike? 3 weeks later, Detective Mallory called. "We've got something," he said. He asked me to come to the station. When I arrived, he spread photographs across the table. Surveillance footage, gas stations, rest stops. Each frame showed David or Daniel alive. But there was one detail that froze me. In one photo, he was wearing a jacket, Daniel's jacket, and the sleeve was rolled up just enough for a faint mark to show near his shoulder. A scar. Daniel's scar. I leaned forward. "Wait, that's not David." Mallory frowned. "Explain." "David never had that scar. Daniel got it from a fall at a site 3 years before David vanished." Mallory's jaw tightened. "So you're saying the man we thought was David might still be Daniel?" I nodded slowly. "Or he's both." That night, I couldn't stop replaying. Everything in my head. The laughter. The strange behaviors. The fingerprints. The note, "If I disappear, check him." What if Daniel had been pretending to be David? What if the brothers had switched again, one alive, one dead, the truth buried between them? The thought made me dizzy. I didn't know who to mourn anymore. The next morning, Mallory called again. "Anna, we need you to come down. We've identified the fingerprints from the car we found near the coast." I drove there with my stomach in knots. When I arrived, he met me outside the station, papers in hand. "The prints matched Daniel," he said softly. "But the blood on the seat, it's not his." My knees nearly gave out. "Then whose is it?" He hesitated. "David's. The DNA is conclusive." I stared at him, my breath caught between disbelief and relief. "So David's dead? For real this time?" Mallory nodded slowly. "Looks that way. Whatever happened between them that night, it ended with one brother gone and the other walking away wearing his name. For the next few days, I moved through life like a ghost. Detectives came and went, neighbors whispered, but my mind was somewhere else, stuck in that moment when the lock turned and my life split in two. Was Daniel a murderer? Or was it self-defense? And if he'd done it to protect me, did that make it better or worse? One evening, I went to the lake, the same one where they'd first declared David drowned years ago. The water was still, reflecting the orange sky like a secret it refused to tell. I stood there for a long time, replaying his last words in my head. "You really don't remember, do you?" Maybe I didn't. Maybe I had chosen not to. A car door slammed behind me. I turned, startled. Detective Mallory walked up slowly, hands in his pockets. "Couldn't stay away either, huh?" he said quietly. "I needed to see it," I whispered. "Where it started?" He nodded. "We found something else in the records. Daniel had been paying off one of David's debts for years. Blackmail money. Blackmail." Mallory's voice dropped. "David was threatening to expose something. We think Daniel confronted him here the night he disappeared." I swallowed hard. "Expose what?" He met my eyes. "We don't know yet. But the amount he paid, it lines up with the sale of your family's old property." "Our old property?" "Yes. The one that mysteriously changed hands 5 years ago. He didn't lose it. He sold it quietly. To cover David's silence." I turned toward the lake again, my pulse roaring in my ears. "Detective," I whispered, "if Daniel killed him that night, why come back?" Mallory looked out at the water, his face unreadable. Maybe to finish the lie. Or maybe to tell the truth. Later that night, I came home to find the front door slightly ajar. The air inside was cold, heavy. On the kitchen table sat a single envelope, addressed to me in Daniel's handwriting. My hands shook as I opened it. Inside was a note and a key. "Anna, I didn't mean for any of this to touch you. The truth is buried where we first fought. When you find it, you'll understand why I had to become him. Forgive me if you can. D." The key had a tag attached, Kevin. The same cabin by the lake from that old photo. The one where the twins used to spend summers and where everything between them had ended. I stood there holding the letter, knowing what I had to do next. The next morning, mist hung low over the lake like a ghost that hadn't made peace yet. I drove out to the old cabin with Daniel's letter clenched tight in my hand, the paper already soft from being read too many times. The road there felt longer than I remembered, empty, quiet. Like time had stopped waiting for me. I parked in front of the wooden steps that led to the porch. The place looked exactly the same as it had in that photograph. The peeling paint, the broken shutters, the faint smell of pine and wet soil. The key fit perfectly. When I stepped inside, the air hit me like memory, dust and wood smoke, and the faint scent of something metallic beneath it. I could almost hear their laughter, those identical voices from years ago, overlapping until I couldn't tell them apart. The cabin was small, one main room, a kitchen in the corner, a narrow hallway leading to the back. I moved slowly, flashlight in one hand, Daniel's letter in the other. He had written, "The truth is buried where we first fought." The back room. That's where the twins had their worst argument, years before David vanished. I remembered it clearly. Daniel had come home that night with a cut on his lip, saying his brother had gone too far. I never asked what too far meant. Now I wished I had. The floorboards creaked as I walked toward the back. Dust clung to everything, and spider webs shimmered like silver thread in the weak light. The flashlight beam caught something at the base of the wall, a section of floor slightly darker than the rest. A loose plank. My heart pounded as I knelt, pried it open, and found a small tin box wrapped in plastic. Inside, folded neatly, were papers. Old police reports, financial records, and photographs of Daniel standing beside a construction site, and beside him, David. I flipped through them one by one, my hands trembling. Then I froze. One picture showed me, standing in front of our house, unaware I was being photographed. The caption on the back read, "She's the reason." The air seemed to vanish from the room. I stumbled backward, nearly tripping over the uneven floor. David had been watching us. Not just from afar, he'd been inside our lives. The next folder was worse. Bank transfers, money withdrawn under my name. I read through the statements until one line made my blood run cold. Transfer to David Ross, $85,000. My name, my signature. Forged perfectly. Daniel had discovered it. That was what the blackmail was about. David had stolen from us, from me. And Daniel had covered it up to protect me. That's why he'd written, "You owe me a life." Because his brother had taken everything, money, peace, identity, and Daniel had paid for it in silence. Until the night he couldn't anymore. Outside, the wind picked up. I gathered the papers, heart pounding, and shoved them back into the box. Then I saw something taped to the inside of the lid. Another letter. "Anna, if you're reading this, I didn't make it home. I came here to confront him, to end what started years ago. He wasn't going to stop until one of us was gone. I tried to make peace, but there's no peace with someone who hates you for being alive. He told me he'd make you believe he was me, that he could live the life he thought I stole. If you ever have to choose between remembering and surviving, choose surviving. You were my reason to stay. And when you find this, I hope you know I never stopped loving you." Daniel, the tears came before I could stop them. Silent, hot, unstoppable. I sat there on that cold wooden floor and wept until my chest hurt. He hadn't run away. He hadn't abandoned me. He'd been fighting for me for years. The police arrived soon after. Detective Mallory's car crunched over the gravel, and he stepped out, coat collar pulled up against the wind. I handed him the box without a word. He scanned the contents, then looked up, his expression somber. "This is enough to close it. It explains everything, the fraud, the disappearance." The switch. I nodded weakly. "So it's over?" He gave a small, tired smile. "As over as it can be. We'll get you into protection for a while. But, Anna," his voice softened, "you survived something most people wouldn't walk away from." I looked out at the lake, still, quiet, reflecting the gray sky above. "Survival doesn't feel like winning. Sometimes," he said, "it's the only victory that matters." In the weeks that followed, the investigation wrapped up. David's remains were recovered near the cabin. Daniel's car was found miles away, abandoned near the cliffs, empty, but with his watch, wedding ring, and a final note inside the glove compartment. "Tell her I kept my promise." Mallory believed he might have gone into hiding, but no one ever found him. Part of me wanted to believe he was still out there, watching from a distance, waiting for the day I could forgive him for leaving. But another part, the quiet, aching part, knew he was gone. I sold the house that summer. Too many ghosts. Too much noise in the silence. I moved closer to the lake, bought a small cottage where mornings smell like wet pine and the air hums with the sound of birds instead of sirens. Some nights, when the wind hits the water just right, I swear I hear two voices, one calm, one echoing beneath it, fading together into nothing. The first time I smiled again was on a cold autumn morning. I'd been walking along the shoreline when I saw something half buried in the sand, a ring, dull from the water, but unmistakable. Daniel's ring. The same one he wore every day, the one missing from the car. I closed my eyes and whispered, "You made it home." And for the first time since that door opened on its own, I finally felt safe enough to breathe. It took losing everything to understand what I had. That love isn't about certainty. It's about the moments when you stand in the dark and choose to believe anyway. Daniel once said our marriage wasn't built on grand gestures, but quiet promises, the kind that survive even when people don't. Now, when I sit by the lake at sunset, I whisper those promises back into the wind. And somewhere between the ripples and the sky, I swear I feel him whisper them back. Sometimes, the people we love the most carry secrets heavier than we could ever imagine. We spend years memorizing their laughter, the way they hold a cup, the sound of their footsteps coming home, believing that love makes us know someone completely. But what happens when one day, you realize you've been living beside a stranger who wears the face of the person you loved? That night, when my door unlocked on its own, I thought it was the beginning of a mystery. But now I know it was the beginning of the truth. Daniel wasn't perfect. He hid things. He made mistakes. But when everything fell apart, I saw what love looks like when it's stripped of pride, quiet, protective, and willing to lose everything for someone else's safety.